Hey everybody, I'm Laura DeCarlo of Career Directors International. If you're starting, currently thinking about starting, or actually building a resume writing or career coaching business, I am so glad you've joined me today. In this show, we share tools, strategy, and mindset tips that lead to your success without the stress. We are currently streaming on CDI's Facebook page, YouTube channel, and LinkedIn page. But listen, I am not going to ask you to jump through any hoops to give me permission to see your name. I'm just going to ask that when you post in the chat, interacting with me, please include your name until we know that we can see it. Because sometimes I just see Facebook user or LinkedIn user and don't always get to know who I'm talking to, which is really weird and awkward, and I don't love it. So if you don't know me yet, if this is your first time with me on my show, my goal is to become your not-so-secret superpower. At Career Directors International, we provide everything you need to love and excel at what you do so you can make a difference while also earning an exceptional living as a career industry professional. So we're prepping for the upcoming September is International Update Your Resume Month. That's a holiday. CDI registered almost 24 years ago. And today I'm going to be starting to talk about common resume writing misconceptions with the audiences, with what job seekers and some resume writers think of who the actual audience is. And I'm excited. I'm going to be giving away one copy, Kindle copy, not this print copy. Hide behind it here. Hide my lovely, calling this the Florida turtleneck. I did have to have a cervical alignment today at 2:30 in an emergency appointment. So yay, I get to look really ridiculous. Anyway, I will be giving away a copy, a Kindle copy of the book to someone who stays with me end to end from start to finish on the show. So it's really important that I get to know you. So why don't you drop in the chat your name and where you are joining me from? Again, don't rely on the chat to identify you. Give me your name. As we go today, if you have questions or anything you want to share, I am encouraging participation. Use the chat so I know who you are and what you need to know or want to share. And I've got hi from Joan. Hey, Joan, so excited to have you join me here. Hi, Charisse from Northern California. Okay, I can see both your names, so you don't need to comment your names again as you communicate with me. All right, third and final, be sure to like, follow, and or subscribe so that you don't miss out when we go live every week at 3:45. You know, depending on participation today, I'm thinking I might give away a Kindle copy of the book every week through September for Update Your Resume Month, but we're going to play that by ear and see how that goes. All right, I also see Debbie Marshall from Iowa, and Debbie, you come through as LinkedIn user, so please continue to include your name. And Gary Foster, Gary in Denver. All right, I see you as well. All right, so we got people joining from all over the US so far. We'll see if we get some international people to join us. Because, I mean, after all, I don't get to show off the lovely Florida turtleneck jewelry very often. All right, if you are ready to get started talking about the audience for the resume, just give me a let's go or yes in the chat. Okay. So first off, I want to kind of have a little bit of a disclaimer, and I want to stress that I expect that, you know, those who watch this video are with the topic that I'm talking about today, you're going to range from job seekers who could be trying to write their very first resume now all the way through very experienced and seasoned resume writers. So I'm asking that, you know, you keep this in mind because I'm going to strive to share information that makes sense to everyone. So you masters out there may think I'm dumbing it down a little and possibly even generalizing. I just want to stress, let's all go with the flow, not look for things to be triggered, but instead look for things to be included with. And again, if you have questions or you have something you want to share on a subject, that's what the chat is for. So, all right, so I don't want to see any, oh, you have it wrong, it's not, you know, in comments later, because, you know, we're just trying collectively, you know, for Career Directors International, professional resume writers and others who work with job seekers, we have a collective goal. What recruiters, it doesn't matter. Our collective goal should be, at the end of the day, helping job seekers to be as successful as possible. And we do that through internalizing processes and through education and serving them with what works. All right, Charisse is ready. Gary is ready. LinkedIn user, possibly that's Debbie, is ready. So let's get going. I am going to do something a little bit different here, so I hope you're all paying attention to me. I'm going to ask 3 questions as we get started here, and ask that you hopefully will participate with me in the chat. Hint, that is important today. All right. So tell me yes or no. These are simple yes and no questions. Just keep it. We're going to keep it really simple. So number 1, when a resume is submitted, it is sent to the hiring manager of the position. And I'm talking about immediately. Job seeker applies, it goes to the hiring manager. Is that yes or no? True or false? I would love to hear what you guys think. And don't feel like I'm going to call anybody out for wrong answers or anything like that. If you're a job seeker and you're new to this, this is a learning experience. All right, Charisse, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, says no. That is the correct answer, Charisse. And Debbie says no. All right, so yeah, this is a biggie we want to debunk today, something we're all collectively, if you work with job seekers, hopefully working to help them understand. I feel it's like one of the biggest mistakes job seekers think that thank you, Charisse, for letting me know I'm pronouncing it right. Job seekers think that they are writing the resume for the final decision maker, and that things will be assumed, and also new resume writers happen to fall into this category too of, we can't assume because it's not always going to start there. It's rarely going to start there. Even many cases when you have encouraged your client and coached and educated them, or you as a job seeker have taken all the steps to network your resume to the right people's hands, it may still have to go down the fun channel that doesn't start with the person you'd actually work for who fully understands what you're doing. All right, second question of 3. When a resume is received, it is always fully read and considered. Yes or no? Let me know in the chat. And Amanda also said no. So perfect scores, everybody with no's. So the second one, when a resume is received, it's always read and considered. Yes or no? I'm guessing we probably have a little bit of a delay since I'm not seeing any replies yet. I should have added on top of the fun jewelry here, my neck corsage, my Florida turtleneck. I also am experiencing a torrential rainstorm. So I actually commented in all of the events I could physically comment in that I was hoping we'd have power. So far, so good, but it's raging out there. All right, so Cherie says, ha, 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 no. Lori says, no. Debbie says, ha, ha, no. And Gary says, you're kidding, right? Well, yeah, I mean, I am kidding. But if you are a job seeker, how many times have you seen people thinking that the purpose of the resume, I write the resume with my responsibilities on it, and an employer is going to read it and see where I fit. I mean, we see that all the time at job fairs. Job openings online, especially with this whole, bot apply. Oh, really easy. We'll do it for a fee. Just apply to all the jobs. It's more and more generic. Those resumes can't be tailored. There's no way on earth that every resume can get read unless, okay, this is where I say that whole grain of salt, because there are certain scenarios where every resume might get looked at. Perhaps it's in a position that wasn't advertised and they cherry-picked candidates and they're going to read every resume. But that is the exception. That's not the rule. Okay. So yes, the correct answer to that was no. And finally, my final question is, if your resume doesn't get a high score with an ATS review tool, it's going to fail. Yes or no? And that's not meant to be a trick question, I promise. But I feel it's important as we talk about audiences today, especially because even with resume writers, I see a lot of stress around this because they write a fantastic resume and then the job seeker turns around and says, well, I ran this through such and such and it got a low score. Yes, Charisse, that's correct. The answer is no. So I'm just going to touch on this, even though this is one of the audiences. I'm going to talk a little bit more about, ATS or applicant tracking systems is an important audience and gatekeeper of a resume's progress. But there are so many of them out there that you can't use one tool and know that, if it gets a low score, that it is consistently a failing and bad resume. I find that to be an incredible misnomer. And quite honestly, every resume that I've helped a job seeker create in the last 5 years, and no, there haven't been a lot of them, but I have helped for myself, but I have helped members through private consulting, working with complicated job seeking situations and whatnot. We don't look at those tools at all. We look at making sure that we are targeting the position, targeting the resume to the position, that we have looked at the phrases and the responsibilities and that the candidate is a match for those. And we have taken the steps to have the right keywords and the right keyword phrases. And yes, you can have design heavy resumes if you know how to format it so that text doesn't get hidden or lost. So there are so many factors that can go into this, but at the end of the day, it's a very simple proposition. If the content is there and it can be read, you are okay. And we need to be able to educate job seekers along those lines to help. And I'm stressing to people, this makes a great PSA. This should be like a social post you're throwing up every couple of weeks. It should be in FAQs on your website. Help job seekers to understand, because we are constantly required to basically bust myths and fallacies in what job seekers believe to be true. All right, so Gary said no. Debbie Marshall said not always. And yes, of course, there are situations where an ATS could be correct. And I was talking to somebody today in the Career Industry Accelerator Club, our monthly coaching and consulting meeting. And, the topic came up of a recruiter who told a job seeker that their resume was terrible, that the resume writer had written. And this is an award-winning resume writer with a high success rate with her clients, getting interviews as part of a process. The resume is not always a magic bullet, job seekers. It's part of a process of success. But, one person, I always say you have to take it with a grain of salt, and we're always forced to educate if we write resumes, because we're swimming against a tide of job seekers being told you're the best person to write your resume and my way is the only way. And often if a recruiter is saying, oh no, this is terrible, it should be done this way, that's just because that is the way they do it with all their clients. When I ran what was an award-winning, thanks to my work, university placement program. For the 7 years I ran it, we were the award-winning top out of 11 campuses in 2 countries. I came to know what my employers liked. And so, yes, we reused the types of formats that they liked to see and the things that they wanted. But I would never say that's what you should go use for cold, job search. That's a whole nother world. So there are no absolutes, and just using a single ATS or talking to one recruiter or talking to, one agency, if you want to work with them, you're going to follow their instructions. Same thing with your clients. And if you're a CDI member, we actually have a group of scripts that I'm making a note to make sure when I post the replay, I post links to the scripts, because it's scripts for my resume didn't work, or my brother's girlfriend's sister's ex-husband who used to work in HR says, script for rebutting those kinds of things, because there are strategies that work. And the first one is knowing our audiences. All right. And Lori also said, not necessarily. Okay. So let's talk about, are we ready to talk about what happens to a resume once it's received? And in some cases, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, because at least for those of you who are participating in the conversation, I know you're all professionals in the industry, which is awesome. I don't see any new faces today. All right, let's get talking about it. So this can vary. This is never going to be an absolute. Sharice, let's dive in. I love it. We're diving in. Okay. So keep in mind, this can vary in the order it takes place in. Sometimes we don't have all three audiences in place. Say somebody's applying directly based on the size and the technology level of the company, they may not have all three of these steps. A very small company may not have all of these steps. If you already have a relationship with the hiring manager, or you're, as a job seeker, an extremely well-known entity in your industry — I wanted to say entity and industry at the same time — this may not all apply. When I talk about these things and the audiences, and the fact that there are three audiences for every resume, I'm always taking the example of the job seeker who is just doing what they want to do on their own, and that is just, oh, I see a job posted online, I will apply for it. Because who agrees? Let me know in the chat that is the most common behavior of a job seeker who doesn't know about the options that are available to them in the market. Also, if they worked with a recruiter, it could be, they may not have any of these audiences involved. But in a general sense, somebody who is just applying for positions online, there's typically going to be three audiences. And this is the information I have always used in my consultations. I might talk a little bit more about it today than I normally would when I used to do consultations with job seekers, and in the script that we have for CDI members. And I think there's a mini version of it in the free stuff section of the CDI website, careerdirectors.com/free stuff, where free stuff is one of the buttons in our navigation. But basically, there are three audiences. So even if you, as a job seeker, go through the processes of thinking you're doing everything right to network your resume into the right hands, or have your resume walked in for a position you have targeted is currently open and you're qualified for, it doesn't mean it's going to start right with that decision maker. In most situations, it's going to have one of the two following reviews first. And again, and I'm just trying to cover the bases here, because there is no absolute, but these are what people can encounter. And that is that some human resources or a clerical administrative staff person is receiving the resumes. They can be reviewed by a human entity. Now, what a human review looks like is not, as we talked about earlier in the chat, it's not I'm going to read this resume and figure out where this person fits. Not in any way, shape, or form. It's like a human computer, but without all the ability to make instant lightning fast connections like we've seen AI and bots be able to do. This is somebody who maybe has a list of responsibilities and they're quickly scanning resumes to see, can I find that in 4 to 7 seconds? And let me know in the chat, how does 4 to 7 seconds sound to you? That is basically the most recent average stats I've seen for how that first hairy eyeball, if a human even looks at it, can take place. But so what I like to stress to job seekers is, with this human element, they're not going to read from first word to last word. They're scanning. And this is where things like front loading with the keywords. I don't mean keyword stuffing, but I'm a very big fan at almost all levels of job seekers, and I've seen it work very well, of having a key areas of expertise. Or for new graduates, I like to call it a knowledge, skills, and training section, so that I can pull in keywords that they're not experts in. And you want to have them be able to at least have the basic, if I look at this resume for a few seconds, I'm not able to physically cross my eyes, I just tried. If I look at this resume for a few seconds, I can see enough potential proof that there's things in this resume that makes this person match. And that's why I love keyword sections. I like to do them. I like to do other visual clues and cues, like bullets that actually have titles on them versus just, long sentence style text in them, so that I call those, they're kind of like markers in the page where you're like, oh, that chapter, I want that. I'm looking for that. Okay, this person can go into the maybe stack. And Debbie Marshall says it's crazy fast so having the right format is critical. Yes, crazy fast. Seconds. You have seconds to stand out. Now, our second, sometimes our first, sometimes our only other pre-screening, no, that's not true. Sometimes first instead of second is where we see, we're going to call it ATS, applicant tracking systems. Now, does a tiny company invest in an ATS? I think maybe if they have a lot of turnover, but if they're not paying well enough and training well enough to keep people, then they're probably also not investing in applicant tracking software. An ATS is simply, I'm going to use real simple terms here for anybody who's not a professional at what we're doing. It's basically a computer brain that can do what HR and admin used to have to spend tons of time on and make mistakes, because the human, is just scanning visually, hoping to see. Well, an ATS can look for keywords and phrases. It can really find information very clearly and easily and quickly. So it's kind of been an assistant to human resources and other employers and agencies, in that they can quickly find candidates who have the right qualifications. The caveat being the few things I started to mention earlier, which is you have to, I hear recruiters like to freak out when resume writers talk about ATS, like we're exploiting the topic. I don't exploit the topic. To me, it's just like when I first heard about personal branding, and I was like, what is this personal branding thing I need to know about? And it took me like a year and a half to finally figure out that personal branding was what I did by performing research and interviewing my client in depth and digging into their results and targeting and finding their unique selling propositions and their stories and their car stories. And it's like, wow, I was identifying their brand and I didn't know it. So like ATS, making ATS happy, literally for anyone who works with a job seeker or for a resume writer, means you don't have a one and done resume. In Resumes for Dummies, that, like I said, I'm going to give away a Kindle copy today. In Resumes for Dummies, I refer to a core resume or a master resume as the first resume someone will build, which is kind of like lumps everything in that. Not everything as if you could do like, oh, I want to be a teacher and a basketball player. I don't mean that. I mean, different roles within project management, different roles within logistics that you might pursue. But it takes into consideration, the core expertise you have, and tend to be a longer, thicker resume that you might only use for things like job fairs or networking or informational interviews, where you're just trying to get, advice and referrals, and not like, presenting a targeted resume. Because then to really succeed for ATS and for the human element as well, you'll look at the job ad, the targeted position, and you will spoon feed back to it as much as possible where you have matches. We never lie in the resume, obviously. But the more you match and the more you include those items, the better chance you have of being a match. So that's the content piece. But then we also have the layout piece, and that is just being careful. Because one of my first published articles forever ago was called something like, what a creative resume is not. Because I saw job seekers all the time who were doing things like, oh, I'll put it on, engineers especially love to do things like, I'll put it on neon yellow paper and it'll stand out. And that's old school when we're talking paper. But job fairs still are paper-based. So you see some crazy things if you ever do job fairs. And if anybody's seen anything crazy at a job fair, let me know in the chat. But when we use creativity in a resume, we have to be careful. Like, I am a fan of text boxes, but I would never put something in a text box that I wanted to be sure could be read by the ATS. And somebody could comment later on this post and be like, well, all ATSs can read it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I've talked to old school companies using really old scanning systems, and I'm trying to think of all of the scenarios that could come up. And in those cases, I'm watching out for not underlining words that make the hanging letters like the Y's and the G's cut off. And I'm not using non-standard system fonts that I had to download from the internet. And if I'm putting something that actually is a keyword necessary story of a keyword phrase of a responsibility that I want to emphasize in the resume, and I'm putting it in a chart for a visual, I'm going to make sure I also talk about it in writing as well. So you cover your bases and make sure that, you're trying to mirror and feedback what is required. And when you do that, you have a much higher chance of actually getting to potentially hear from HR or, get an interview scheduled with decision makers, which is wonderful. So that's one part. That's more content, but also being careful with formatting. And just again, if you're a CDI member, we do have an incredible tutorial on making visually dynamic resumes ATS friendly. And you don't have to be super fancy. You can do things like I helped my husband land a job with one of the top 5 aerospace DoD contractors. Gosh, it was just last year, and it was his dream company. We live here in Florida by Kennedy Space Center, and he's always wanted to be involved. He's been in aerospace. I helped him get in aerospace in 2018, but it was like, okay, now that I moved from being a truck driver to working in aerospace, which was a huge jump. Now how do I get in with this, my dream company? And literally I was about, creating the master core resume, then scouring the ads, customizing every bit of content, which that doesn't take a lot of time, but it's a hugely necessary issue. Using, I used a little bit of color, like his name, his section headers were in color. I used titles on the bullets under the job description so that somebody knew if they were looking for this subject, wow, he's going to talk about that there. I can look at that later, or I can read it now. So there were visual cues. I used a text box to include I think it was an employer testimonial quote about his work. So something that wouldn't be scannable by ATS, but gave a visual element to it. And yeah, he had one interview and one job offer. with that company. And got like, I can't remember now what we were so excited. I think I posted it in the CDI Facebook group. I think it was like a 29% pay increase or something. I don't know. But anyway, so literally don't overthink this, just embrace it and know it's about customization. Okay, so whether we get the human review first or the ATS review first or neither, both, whatever, it's very rare unless you're literally applying to a one-person company that it goes first to the decision maker. Usually you only get to the decision maker if you are handpicked by them or I was reading a comment. I'll just go ahead and read that now. So Cherise said, nice. And she also said you have to connect the dots for the reader so they can see you. Exactly. So they can be easily found. Like when I'm talking to, entrepreneurs in this industry, I talk about, like no trust. And we're talking about job seekers. We're talking about find match like, so which I just came up with, so it may not be the best analogy. Okay, so now we're at the point where so many job seekers think it starts, and that's with, when your resume has survived some initial screenings and we've put you in what I call the maybe pile, not the we're going to hire you, we're definitely going to interview you. You have succeeded to make it to the maybe pile. People who appear to have the qualifications this employer is seeking. And at that point, we're not done, okay? This is not a Monopoly game where you get to pass go and get I can't remember how much, because no one will play with me. I guess I'm aggressive, and I didn't think so. I haven't got anybody to play Monopoly with me in a decade. I'm like, I won't buy hotels, I swear. But anyway, so you don't get to pass go and collect your money. You have to recognize that this is where we go beyond the I fit the bill of responsibilities for the job, and I get into here's how I do the job better, faster, smarter, cheaper, with more profit, higher quality, fill in the blanks, because it's going to vary from candidate to candidate and type of role to type of role. So I say, right now, when I'm explaining this to job seekers, I'm like, now you're in a pile of presumably equally qualified candidates. Now, what is going to make this hiring authority, or potentially your future boss, look through this? When I say pile, think virtual, they're looking on the screen. Some people print them out, like the Tory Awards. Some of our judges like to print them out and look at them. You never know how old your employer is. But so whatever they're doing, when I say stack, that's what I mean. So what is going to stand out to them and get them excited? And this does matter, because this is not, looking for a job. It's not a participation trophy kind of thing. It's not a no job seeker left behind. There's typically, unless they're staffing a new department or new unit, then it's usually one person gets hired. And it's a very uneven playing field. You don't get to see your competition. Yikes, right? So what we do above and beyond matching the job matters. And that's why if you're trying to write your own resume, which I think is very challenging, because we take so much for granted. And let me know in the chat if you have seen job seekers who take their experience and their value and their achievements for granted. Say yes in the chats. So this is the point where we have to dig into each responsibility that matches that job description. And that's why that core and master resume is so good, because you get these things down first, and then you pick and choose for your targeted resume. So this is where we have to ask. So tell me about this. What did you, I know this is what you're responsible for. Tell me about it. Did you walk into any problems or challenges that needed to be solved? I call this My interview strategy with job seekers, and there are multiple pieces to it, but at the end of the day, it is very much I call it, um, dig for the carrot, be the rabbit digging for the carrot. We just keep digging. They're like, oh yeah, it was a mess. Oh, tell me about the mess. Well, sales were down. Well, how much were sales down? Or our location had dropped significantly in the year's performance. Can you quantify that for me? And you just keep digging to get the details and specifics. We were the worst performing branch. Oh, really? How many branches are there? And we improved significantly. How much did you improve? So you're looking, and sometimes you're with a job seeker or as a job seeker, you don't see that you've accomplished anything. You just feel like you're a good person who goes to work every day, does what they're supposed to, contributes to the company's bottom line. How could anybody want anything else, right? And you're the prime example of the person who's taking their magic for granted. And that is where it can be so valuable to work with somebody who's going to dig it out of you. But one of my favorite questions for job seekers in this arena is to simply, if they can't think of anything they've accomplished, I'll keep asking, but I always ask them, I want to know, a way you made things work better, faster, smoother, even if it just improved your daily work and no one else ever noticed it. Noticed it. Because that can be a great way for them to start thinking about, they could be like an organizational maven and they came in and they set up systems that made their job process much easier, and they're just taking it for granted or they've forgotten. All right, Cherie says, I was on a call today with a senior leader in IT, and we talked through this very thing. He didn't think he did much at all, sometimes asking, well, what would happen if you weren't there for a week, to help them think about their impact, what they bring. Yes, exactly. We have to go at it often in different, from different directions. I read this book many years ago called Understanding. It's kind of a psychology-ish kind of book by Jane Nielsen. And I don't like the new, she's put out like 6 editions. I like the original pink one, which you can still track down on Amazon. But it talks about how, and I've seen this in that's not job search related, but I've seen it in other things I've learned and studied over the last 3 decades in this industry. And that is, in anything, we have to try to slip past a person's thought system. Like if they've just been laid off or they've been in a job search for a while, they can really be feeling down and ineffective and not even seeing where their light shines brightly. So we often have to just keep asking the question, ask it differently, because we're trying to sneak past their thought system. And sometimes it just comes out as you just keep going through the items and you're probing, and you have to, when we work with anyone who might be in a stress situation, you don't have to, because we all come at this with different personalities, but I find that most coaches and resume writers tend to be more nurturing in their approaches to what they do. It just makes sense because you're trying to pull information out. And I can remember working with, when I got that resume contact to be the resume expert for those 50 some odd professional associations back when I had my resume practice. I can remember I had to write a resume for the president of the software company. And, initially she just every time one of my favorite things to do is always try to find out what a person stepped into in a position. And I might ask things like what Cherie said about, what would happen if you weren't there for a week. One of my things was always like, what did you step into when you joined, when you took over this position? And I'll give some thought joggers like, was it a newly created position? And if so, what was expected of you? What were the 30, 60, 90-day goals that were set, if any? And if they weren't, what did you set? And, a lot of times and I have a few more questions that I ask about trying to just get the lay of the land, because that's so, so critical. And I see many, many resume writers and almost all job seekers missing that point. They go straight from, here's my job title, company, and dates, to some bullets of, challenge, action, result kind of methodology. There's many different methodologies, but they skip that, what I call connective tissue or hook, the thing that helps someone understand how incredibly impressive each of those bullet accomplishments really is, because they have the perspective. But anyway, most people don't answer those well to begin with, and you have to kind of skip over it and start looking at each responsibility. Tell me about this, and doing your rabbit with the carrot digging. But this president, yeah, so she didn't have anything for that at first, and I, kept asking her and poking around, and just through the nature of poking and prodding and continuing to ask questions despite her no, I ultimately was able to find like the lever that was like ridiculously cool, and that she finally was like, oh my gosh, it was an old boy's, because she had all kinds of achievements, she did, but I was looking for that connection. And finally it came out that they almost had hired her on an old boys network kind of joke, like, yeah, let's see what this girly can do here. This is, we've already accomplished everything that can happen in this, and entrenched market with these mature products, and you're not going to do any better. And she kicked their butts all over the place. And so obviously we have to be careful how we write that, but it led for a very juicy story. So put ourselves, whether you're a job seeker or a resume writer, put yourselves in the shoes of somebody who now has this grouping of qualified candidates who seem to meet the responsibilities of the job. And you look at the ones that are all, here's what I did, the responsibilities that match. And then you look at the few, because not many people get help with their resume, which means those who do tend to have a decided edge if they had an extraordinary resume writer. Those who do are going to have their unique brand. They're going to have their unique selling points. They're going to have, if they're available, metrics of achievement. And if metrics don't fit, they're going to have other ways that aren't just listed, but that are brought to shine in the resume, so that our goal, ideally, with every job seeker, and yeah, I once did a transition assistance program for a grocery store chain that closed in my county. And so I worked with everything from florists to accountants to meat cutters to clerks. And it's very challenging. And anybody who tells you resume writing is easy, let me know in the chat if you think resume writing is easy. I think every new resume creates a new challenge as you're hunting for the gems that are going to allow somebody to stand out. So our third audience, just to close the book on this, that's the decision maker. And that's where the how and the why, the how and the why of how they did it better, faster, smarter, cheaper, with greater quality, even if it only made a difference to their working job. That's where we start to pull out those nuggets and find ways to make them shine. And the further up in a resume you can emphasize, not necessarily specifics, but trends of what a person excels at, the better. And my last little tip, that even though it's not about the subject of the audiences, it is about the subject of fulfilling the third audience. And that is very simply that if somebody has these, bottom line ROI, That's what I should have said from the beginning for our decision maker. If you have a client who has bottom line ROI contributions, because jobs are a cost factor and employers would love to see them be a profit center. So when you can show bottom line ROI strengths that a person has that they've used in prior positions, that there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to use those same lenses in their next position, that's what we front load with. Because that's what gets somebody excited. And a senior executive once told me, he's like, I have been writing and reading resumes for 40 years. And the resume you wrote for me was the first one where I wanted to actually read every word. He's like, you brought me in, you told stories, you did it quickly, you had results, it flowed. So think of that resume as like an upside down funnel. This is what I'm applying for. This is why I'm the best at that I could possibly be. These are the keywords that make me a match. Here's my proof. Sorry, you couldn't see that far down, but the proof is obviously the bigger end of that inverted funnel. Okay, super excited, and the chat has gone quiet. So I was probably going to go a little bit more generalized than I did. I talked longer than I planned to, but that is my overview, and it is what has served me in my roles of resume writer, university placement director, trainer of those who work with job seekers, military transition centers, university career centers, members of CDI. So it does work. And if you have a similar process, let me know in the chat. And I just want to urge, if a job seeker has watched this, comes upon this at some point, and or you work with job seekers, please, if you always plan for the contingency of all three audiences every single time, you're going to effectively cover your bases and give yourself or your client the greatest chance. All right. Cherise says, love it. I love nerding out over resume writing, so this is helpful. And Gary says, like the inverted pyramid analogy. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Debbie says, yes, I use a very similar process. Okay. Now, I'm sure that this is going to lead, hopefully, I'm not sure, hopefully that this is going to lead to wanting to know more about the nitty gritty around what steps you should be taking with content and layout to satisfy these audiences. And I went a little bit further than I planned to, but I think that gives us some good meat. I am super eager to talk more on these subjects. And next week, my plan is to, where is it here? I don't even see where I wrote. There's like the 10 key, I have it written down right in front of me somewhere. The 10 key components of winning resumes. That's what I'm showing up with next Wednesday. And I'm super excited to talk about that. Now, so that you don't miss out and you have another chance at my next resume book, my Resumes for Dummies 8th edition giveaway, because I want to give it to everybody here today who's been participative, but there can only be one. So I will do it again next week. And if you keep me excited by people showing up and participating, I will continue to do it through Update Your Resume Month. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow so that you get notifications. We do meet every Wednesday at 3:45 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay, and if you want more between the shows, I will be sharing links to Update Your Resume Month resources and other related lessons and tools on the replay page on CDI's website. If you are an association member or subscribe to the list, you will receive notification when that is available. For you job seekers who have joined me, we do have a special place for you on the website. Just go to careerdirectors.com and click on job seekers in the navigation. And there you can search our directory to find certified professionals and niche specialists. and you can access resources to help you understand how to vet professionals, as well as many other resources from our members. Okay, if you are a career industry pro and you aren't currently an association member, I definitely want to point you to resources on the CDI site. And yes, I am going to do that book drawing here in just a moment. Well, not book drawing, book giveaway. So if you go over to careerdirectors.com and click on free stuff in our navigation, you will see many opportunities there. One is to join our community on Facebook. It's a great community with, I think, over 400 members in it. Great place to get support and to find out when these shows are coming and what I'm talking about. There are a number of deep dive lessons, to the point where we actually have testimonials from people before they became members talking about what it allowed them to achieve just using the free resources. And we always say, if it's that good on the outside, imagine what it's like on the inside. But there's a lot there. So I do recommend take the 1-minute quiz, and members can take this quiz as well, because it will help you identify the number one thing that's blocking you from a 6-figure income as a career industry professional. And better yet, besides getting clear on your number one blocker, it's going to point you to what resources we think you should start with. And so getting clear on that, there'll be even more resources for members, but you could start with those same quality of resources in the free stuff. All right, so also membership. You don't have to be a member for some of our courses and certifications, but we do recommend you're going to get on our list by either taking the quiz or by going to the join page and getting on our wait list for membership, because we do currently have a wait list. Okay, the giveaway. Dun, dun, dun. All right, I see something new in the chat here. Actually, let me get this off of my screen first. So we have in the chat. All right, Charisse, can't wait. All right, and Debbie, I use a similar process, and I don't know if I read out loud Gary's, like the inverted pyramid analogy. Yeah, I love that one. Debbie, lots of CDI resources for career coaches. Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate that. Okay. Despite talking about, there's only one winner when it comes to jobs, and, this is not an equal society, I still, God, I hate having to pick one person. And I was like, what will you do? You're just going to play it by ear. Whether you're going to put everybody's name in this thing and spin it and see what happens. And then I was like, you know what? It's super easy. And I'm not saying I'm going to do it the same way next week, because I got to keep you on your toes. But I was like, I'm going to pick the person who was the most participative this time. So that was simple. Everybody's been awesome. And I thank Gary and Debbie and Joan and Charisse and who else was here participating? I can't get, the thing doesn't want to spin for me. Okay, and Lori, all for showing up and being so participative, and Amanda, really great. I really appreciate it. And I'm hoping each of you can get a copy if you don't have one yet. But this week, the person who just wowed me through her deep participation and engagement is Charisse Green. So all you need to do is send an email to info@careerdirectors.com, and we will order you, because I am paying for these myself, as gifts to support our community and CDI, and for Update Your Resume Month. What better way to make sure we all learn is if I share the wisdom. So go ahead and send an email to info@careerdirectors.com. And for the rest of you, and hopefully Charisse too, this is hopefully good, valuable stuff. And I will see you here next week, where we're talking about the 10 strategies for a winning resume. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. And I hope to see you next week. And have fun promoting Update Your Resume Month.